I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first thing on the agenda is to approve the agenda. We have an amended agenda that is in front of every spot when you got here today. And basically, we added two items, 3.25, which is election service maintenance agreement that we have to do with LeSueur County, and then just a summation of the evaluation that we did of City Administrator Mike Johnson at a closed door meeting at the end of the January 16th council meeting. So those are the only two additions to the original agenda. So if there's anything additions or anything, questions or anything on the agenda? Okay, if not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
I got a second by Sean Ryan. If there's no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. The agenda is approved. First, we got Glen on board.
Good evening. In front of you, we got memo for purchasing a 2018 F-350 pickup for the Parks Department. We'd be trading in a 2006 pickup with a plow on the front of it. This actually, to give you a little history on this, this was supposed to be a 2017 item. It was budgeted in 2017. They shut down state contract on us earlier last year than they typically would have. And so we carried that money over into 2018. And in all actuality, it was probably a good thing because they increased the trade-in value that they're offering for this pickup. And the prices of the new pickup and of the plow did not change from the last state contract. So it actually worked out in our favor this way. This pickup is used for pulling trailers during the summer, hauling equipment around. During the winter, it's used to plow parking lots, plow walking paths, things like that. So it is recommendation of staff to authorize the purchase of a 2018 F-350 from Midway Ford and a Western V-plow from Aspen Equipment for a total of $24,240.88.
Glenn, why the big difference in trade-in from the three dealerships? Just
Don't really know.
high.
It kind of surprised us too. They're standing by it. They said that and you do read this today, and I've heard it a number of times, that used pickups are worth quite a bit of money. The value of used pickups has gone up considerably in the last year or two. I did check on like Kelly Blue Book and Craigslist and Car Soup as far as the value of a pickup that would be comparable to ours, and it was hard to find a two-door pickup. You just don't see them anymore. They're usually cab and a half or four-door, something like that. But I did find a few of them on Car Soup. And Car Soup, I found 11 pickups. They were 9,000 to 13,600 is the range I found. Kelly Blue Book saying that selling it to a private party, you should be looking at 9,300 to 11,200. Okay. So the 12's right in there. Okay. So, like I said, it was to our benefit because everybody raised the trade-in on it from last year.
Thank you.
What's the expected delivery date if it's approved?
Delivery date from Midway Ford would be sometime in May if it was ordered right now.
Okay. So it's going to be ordered, it's not one they have on there.
That's correct.
Any other questions for Glenn?
Nope. I'll make a motion to purchase the plow and the pickup as recommended by the staff.
Okay.
I'll second.
I got a motion by Dave Brusick, second by Maggie Bass to approve the pickup from Midway Ford and the plow from Aspen Equipment for a total of $24,240.88. If there's no other comments or questions, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Glenn. Is it gonna be white?
Yes.
Okay. I thought, maybe we'd go green or something.
We're kind of partial to white.
Okay, next, Ken, are you taking this one?
I am.
Okay.
If I get the map to where I want it here. All right, that'll work. All right, so as the council will recall, back in November 20th, we had a closed session with the council at that time to talk about the property at 514 East Main, which includes the 7-unit apartment building, as you can see in the overhead, which is adjacent to Memorial Park, right along Main Street there, and the possibility of acquiring a portion of the lot, which is basically, we'll just call it undeveloped, had no buildings on it, and was adjacent to and could be added to Memorial Park. Staff ultimately was able to negotiate a purchase price of $60,000, which falls directly in line with our discussions that we had with the council at that time. And also that included seller paying closing costs and seller paying for the preparation of the survey for this particular portion of the property, as the area in red is actually the property to be acquired. Would need to be split off from the portion of the lot that contains a 7-unit apartment building, and then there's actually 2 other outbuildings, garages on the property as well. I'll actually scroll down to the survey here. So this is obviously, you can see how close by this property is, 0.73 acres in size, adjacent to the main Park Avenue driving lane as you come into the park playground off to the west side of the driveway there. The cabin, Memorial Cabin, directly south of the property here. So it's actually a portion of the property that a lot of people, I think, thought was already within the limits of Memorial Park, but this has been in fact private property, and was determined, as we've talked in the past few years about enlarging the footprint of Memorial Park where we were able to, and eventually continue to expand Memorial Park with these adjacent property acquisitions. So I'm going to go to the survey here and get a little better idea of how that lays out. So when we initially talked with the council back at that closed session, we were looking at about 0.66 acres in size. And what we were basing that off of, with no survey at that time, was trying to get the property line to get as close to the outbuildings as we could, but still leave them meeting the setbacks of the lot lines as they would be created. So essentially that put the lot lines within 6 feet of this building, and then this one was already where it was located within closer than 6 feet, so no change there. And then we had to have a 30-foot rear setback to the rear portion of this garage on that west side of the property. So that's essentially, the property was raised to 0.73 acres. All throughout this, before the survey was done, we thought it was going to be at 0.66 acres. Came down to it, they did not ask for any additional money for the additional square footage. There's about 3,000 square feet additional than what we had initially talked about. So same price, get a little more land. I think that worked for us and the seller of the property as well. As you can see in the packet, should the council want to move forward with the purchase of the property, which would be paid, I should note, by the Property Acquisition Fund. It's a 228 fund that the Park Board often sees on their financials. We have a balance of just under $140,000 in that fund, and that fund is comprised of money that we obtained through parkland dedication when the property is platted within the city. This would remain after the purchase. We'd have about $80,000 remaining, just under that, out of that Park Property Acquisition Fund. So exactly the purpose and what we have that fund set up for. So Scott Riggs did actually take a look at the purchase agreement from the Remax Realtor that you see in front of you, and that starts on essentially page B1 of the packet. And then we had an addendum which starts on page B14, and all that specifically spelled out after Scott had initially reviewed it was referencing prior to a survey the 0.66 acres that we would be looking at purchase, et cetera, et cetera. So we had actually included this air photo map at that time. And then we finally had a final addendum that Scott put together, which is starting on page B18 through the last page, B26, which included actually referencing the survey and actually referencing the legal description of the property that would be acquired. So that is what you see in the packet in front of you. Ultimately, again, should the council wish to move forward with this, the council would need to approve the resolution, which is located behind the original air photo and survey. That resolution authorizes the acquisition of the property located at 514 East Main, I should say the portion of the property at 514 East Main, and allows the city administrator and mayor to enter into the purchase agreement. Likely that closing could occur sometime in February towards the end of the month. One item that has to be handled and is really the only thing of any substance to be taken care of is each of the 7 tenants in the apartment building have to sign off on a waiver of their right to use this property. Basically all the leases included their apartment and the use of the premises for the land. So none of them had an exemption for selling the portion of that lot that was included in their lease. None of them used the property, but to have a clean title, that is one thing that Scott noted, that had to have signatures from all the tenants, so we don't foresee any issue with that. But that is one thing that all of the 7 tenants have to sign off on that document before we can close. So we have that clean title. So I think we'll not have any issue with that, but that is the one thing that has to be done.
Are we purchasing this from the original owner, or did they sell it?
This would be a purchase from somebody that's got a purchase agreement to buy it. So
Okay.
basically the closings would all occur kind of sequentially in order.
Okay.
The purchasers, actually you see the names in there, Adam and Amanda Whitcomb. They would purchase the property and then it would be sold to us immediately with this portion split out.
Okay.
So they have maintained the property with the apartments on it. They can continue to rent that without having the extra land in the table. It's kind of they didn't want to buy the property with all the extra land, so it actually works out pretty well.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the authorization acquiring that parcel of land.
Second.
Yeah, the motion of the resolution to.
I'll second.
I got a second by Sean Ryan. If there's no other questions or comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Good, that'll be a nice addition to the park.
It will be.
Next on the agenda, we have discussion on the possible closure of the outdoor swimming pool. Now, this could be a little misleading, but I'm going to hand it over to Maggie because this is something that was brought up at the Joint Powers Committee, and Maggie kind of brought it to my attention to put it on the agenda. So, Maggie?
Thank you. So as you know, the Joint Powers Committee is responsible for the operations of both the indoor and the outdoor pool. The indoor aquatic facility is up and running, so now we need to pay some attention to the outdoor pool, and more specifically because community education needs to know from us if the pool will be open so that they can plan any programming and get their materials out to the printer so it can be distributed to the community. So the Joint Powers Committee did have a discussion in October and then again just recently about how we felt about the outdoor pool. And there were some concerns with the facility itself because it is outdated. It's not going to be used for swimming lessons any longer, so all of that revenue is going to the indoor facility. It's just aesthetically not a very pleasing pool at this point, so they're not really sure what type of activities they could plan for the pool. They were talking about maybe bringing some of the whibbits over, or doing, taking some of the other items that they have, recreational items from the indoor pool, and bring it over to the outdoor pool, and then they would have to go back and forth with that, and it would be shared between the two facilities. But another concern was staffing. As you might remember last year with the outdoor pool, there were times that it had to close because lifeguards were not available. Now, the lifeguard staffing has increased a bit, but according to the aquatics manager, it still is going to be a struggle to staff the outdoor pool and the indoor pool, especially with the indoor facility. We've got swim club. Again, we talked about the swimming lessons. We'll have swim meets, and there's other activities that are going to be using. They have to have a lifeguard on deck, so they're going to be using the lifeguards with an expanded number of programs in the indoor facility. So that was the main concern. The other concern, of course, was monetary, that the indoor facility being new, they would like to keep as much of the revenue stream going into the indoor facility. So as I mentioned back in October, we had a discussion and we took a vote amongst the voting members of the joint powers, and it, I believe, was 4-2 and 4-1, and one person was absent. 4-1 to close it. And then we did have some commentary from some of the other individuals that attend the Joint Powers Committee meeting, but they're not voting members. And the consensus was to close the pool. There was some other thing that just crossed my mind and I completely forgot. And Sean, you had some emails, and I received some emails too from community members. And although it's not a broad spectrum of getting an idea of what the community thinks, the emails that I read all were in favor of closing it. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't move forward with something. I know that we do have some money in our budget to keep it open this year. So, that's a possibility, but I just wanted to bring forward to the council what the Joint Powers Committee voted and the reasoning behind the closure.
Okay. Sean, any other additional comments?
When we broke down the analysis of it, I believe, and I don't quote me because I don't have the exact number, but it was our per splash costs were around $8 and we were only charging $4. So we were essentially losing money we were never going to turn that profit. So a lot of days only had 9 people, 11 people. Just obviously with the new facility and all the amenities being over there, that's where the kids want to go because they want the climbing wall and the other whibbits. But it really comes down to a staffing issue and the fact that it's costing us more money to keep it open than it's bringing in.
And Mike did include in our packet the per splash.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you were right, it was
Was it 8 or?
a little over $8.
In one situation, 9 in another, or 7 in another.
Yeah.
I have a question for Glen, and this is probably hard to answer now, but if we kept it open for another summer, do you think we could get by without doing any major? And I know things can happen over the winter, so it's kind of what's your best guess now?
At this point, I would say yes, because we don't know, besides the known problems, we don't know of anything that's going to fall apart tomorrow. That's not saying it can't. As you probably do remember, there was always the big talk about the filter. It's an old steel filter, and without spending a lot of money to get it x-rayed and things like that, you just don't know how thick the metal is. If that filter would because of rust or deteriorating away, would blow a hole, the pool's done. Then it's shut down. That can happen. I'll compare it to your water heater at your house. Kind of the same thing. It's fine today, tomorrow it's going to flood your basement. Kind of the same scenario. What we know now, besides the known problems, the leak is the big one. The uncertainty with the filter, we don't know of anything else that's just going to fall apart unless something shows its ugly head because of winter, which I wouldn't suspect that to be the case.
Okay, thanks.
Can we also have some statistical data too, also, how many memberships we sold just to the outdoor pool and that stuff?
There is data on that, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then obviously some historic data before the indoor pool opened as well, and you can kind of compare that. And I think it's difficult to compare that data from last year because we had kind of a partial year for the indoor pool and the outdoor pool. But I think Sean brought up the point, there were a lot of days that there just wasn't a lot of kids up at the outdoor pool. Whether that was the newness of the new facility versus that, I think a little bit of that's hard to pinpoint, but staffing is definitely a big issue. That's been brought up over and over again at joint powers meetings.
Okay.
There's real concern about that,
Yeah.
the staffing. That's the main thing that
Mm-hmm.
And I think the bias would be the staff would be used at the indoor facility. And that means that the outdoor pool would be closed that particular day if there weren't guards available.
So in 17, we lost, what, $35,000 on the outdoor pool? So I don't know if it's worth to throw that away for one more season.
And that's just cost, right, Mike? That isn't our time?
I'm sorry, Sean, you were saying that,
According to the city lost another $35,000 in 2017 on the outdoor pool.
you want to move 7 minutes?
And on the joint powers, October 23rd, 2017 minutes. Item 3.
I think that was noting, Sean, our staff time. That wasn't necessarily from the wastewater treatment plant facility.
Right.
That wasn't necessarily a budget item.
Right.
That was
Yeah.
approximation. I think we
Yeah.
actually notified it was actually closer to 32.
Right, but we are sending wastewater treatment people over there on a daily basis to do the
Correct.
daily maintenance and checking on
The
it.
setup of every year.
And we typically do in our budget, when we move things in between the departments, we kind of track that, don't we? I mean, I know this was just an estimation, but,
We have just done that. I believe we had done just an estimate on hours and
Yeah, right.
the time.
okay.
I don't think it's anything's been tracked, and I think the reason Mike brought that up was when they were talking about the cost and breaking up the cost for this last year, they didn't have that in their formula, and it's like, well, now hold it here, we have labor that's not actually distributed to the swimming pool, and that was to get I think, to get that payment, to agree on a payment that we came up with last year.
Well, I think if you go back in history, that part of that reason, and it was that way when I arrived 10 years ago, and it's kind of been generally accepted, is that our staff of wastewater opened the pool in the spring and did the daily, weekly, and monthly checking, and then I helped close it along with assistance from either parks or streets or whatever was necessary at the time to do that. But the day-to-day checking is handled by them. They're the certified pool operators, and that was done many years ago, and I think was a way to, if you had added that in as a cost, a labor cost in the general fund pool segment, that either taxes would have had to have gone up, or there would have had to have been a revenue stream to cover that labor, and so it was done with the staff through the wastewater department, and so that piece never got fully included in the actual accounting of what you see in the general fund as far as what has historically been done to operate the outdoor pool. So it's a little misleading when you you look at it, it truly doesn't account for all of the costs that go into that facility.
I know the school district or community head is looking for a decision, but not tonight, but I think fairly urgent, probably by the next meeting.
I thought it was by middle of,
February, but I think Mike talked to him
Then I
and,
raised that question that night at the meeting, that they asked middle of February, and I said our next council meeting wouldn't be till February 20th. And Janelle indicated that that would be acceptable in case we needed a stretch of a few days if the council, and I was looking ahead in anticipation, not knowing whether the council would try to fundamentally vote on the issue tonight, or whether you would do something to go another 2 weeks or not, but it was to find out for their timing that they don't have much time beyond the middle of February to be able to continue putting together the process to handle the community ed booklet that I think comes out in April.
and we did take another vote, as Maggie said, at our last meeting last Monday, and it was the same results with the one person that had voted against it in October was not at that meeting, but I'm assuming that her vote would have been the same against it, but it still would have been a 4-to-1 vote.
okay. I don't know what the consensus of the council is. My opinion is I would like to see some of the numbers on how many memberships we sold and so some of that information to review and, for the next meeting, and then maybe put it on the docket. I don't know if we want to have a public hearing and invite people to make some comments. I know we had a public hearing, was it 2 years ago, Mike, I think, or 3, at the school board conference room when we were talking about, even before the indoor pool was approved, talking about the outdoor pool and some of the options. And what I recall, that a lot of the people were looking for an outdoor facility, but it really wasn't the outdoor facility that we had. It was more of a splash pad or a water park type of facility.
And I think maybe 1 or 2 years ago, there was a survey that went out that I think contained...
District-wide it went out.
Yes, yeah. So maybe we could dig that up and see
Yeah.
what some comments were.
Now the question is, do we want to have a public hearing where people have the option before the next, at that next meeting to voice their concerns, and then also be able to listen to some of the facts and...
I think it would be helpful to guide our decision to just be, I think it's just the due diligence that we
Mhm.
should take into consideration.
Okay.
One of the things Maggie touched on that really is impacting the operation a little bit with the school as you take a look at trying to cover the summer program is all of the swimming lesson revenue that used to go into the outdoor pool operations has now been moved over to the indoor pool with the movement of all of those swimming lessons, so that there was no, are we going to have the swimming lessons or aren't we because it's too cold or not in that regard. So one of the major losses in the compilation between the city and the school in operating that pool has seen a fairly significant movement of revenue out of the outdoor into the indoor.
But I think also if we could get an analysis of if taking that revenue out, the only other revenue I assume that goes to the pool is people who daily fee walk up or have a membership. And to kind of look at the cost, I think right now we do what, a $11,000 payment annually for that, Mike?
To the school district, yes.
Right, and besides, and even if we incorporate our labor time, that 32,000, it'd be real interesting to see that based on the number of, I know they offer different packages, you could have just an outdoor pass or outdoor indoor pass, type of thing also, but, just to get a quick summation of that, to say that, if we again, and I don't know if you have to have 2 lifeguards per so many people or what that is.
They're trying to work with the state to get clarification on that in hopes that they might be able to just have 1 on deck. But right now, I think that for them to be prudent, they're basing it on the number of kids that are in the pool. And especially with the indoor facility, they have to have a guard at the swim channel, the 0 depth, and the regular pool. So if they each have their station, so they've got at least 3 guards.
Mhm.
And then somebody checking somebody in up front, working the pool.
Mhm. But that wouldn't have to be a lifeguard per se.
No, it's not a lifeguard, but it's
No, I agree.
another worker that we have to
Right.
pay, so.
Well, if we wait another 2 weeks, it gives staff some time to put together some of those numbers, and it might help at least the public understand
Mhm.
what we know or what probably remember.
Right.
And I also just want to say that, take a look at materials that Mike put together, and in particular on the January 29th meeting that we had, item number 3. Okay. So item number 3 is in regards to the financials of the indoor facility to date, or November, December, it's not in to date. So I just wanted to point that out. Because if there's a revenue or if there's a deficit, then it's shared between the city and the school.
Mhm. Okay.
I recommend we table it until the next council meeting.
Okay, do you want to table it, and you also want to have a public hearing at the next council meeting? Would that be your recommendation?
Well, we can schedule a public hearing.
The question is, do you want us to formally put together a notice that would go in the newspaper that the council's going to consider this at the next meeting? Or do you want to just put it on the website and social media, or how do you want us to? I think I've got, Ken, what do we got till 10 o'clock tomorrow morning to put together
To get it in this week's paper,
yeah, that we'd have short time to just put a brief blurb in that the council will be holding a public hearing at 6 p.m. on the 20th of February to consider possibly closing the outdoor pool. Anyone interested, please attend.
Yeah, I think we should. I think we should do it officially.
Could we also, for those that wouldn't be able to attend, have something on our website for comments or a quick yes, no button?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mike, Ken, you guys understand what we're looking for the?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you both very much. Thank you, Maggie, for bringing this to our attention, and hopefully we can address that, make a decision at the next council meeting on the 20th of February. Next on the agenda is 3.25, yearly maintenance agreement with LeSueur County for elections. Mike, are you going to take this?
I'm going to try it.
Or Ken?
I can take it.
Ken and Patty kind of worked on this.
Okay.
one, so.
This is a new item for the council to consider from LeSueur County. As the council knows, we had new equipment we had to purchase from Scott County as far as the tabulator machine. So for the elections last year, we had new equipment on the Scott County side, and we're still using the semi-antiquated equipment with LeSueur County. Rather than have each of the cities just in one lump sum buy their equipment, they had come up with the idea to have each of the cities, townships, and the school districts within LeSueur County enter into this agreement, which is attached to the packet here, trying to base it on population roughly of the number of people within the cities, within the county, what they would pay for this annual cost for each city, and it would run from 2018 here this year through all of 2021. And ultimately, it would help the county pay for the new tabulator equipment and other costs for administering the election. One of the other big items on here is that the county, just like Scott County, actually takes care of our absentee ballot board, which means that during the elections and even prior to the elections, when people do absentee balloting, which has become very popular and actually saves a number of voters on election day, county takes care of that. They do all the canvassing and making sure the absentee ballots are correctly filled out. We don't have to deal with that. That's a huge, huge benefit to the city to have that done by the county. So what they're looking at is a $1,200 annual payment for this 2018 through 2021 time period. Again, we get the new tabulator, we get other election equipment included with that, and then they do our absentee ballots that we have for the elections through that time. So Patty and I talked about this, bill is more than fair to cover that equipment. And as noted, we did budget for 2018 for this, so this is just looking for your recommendation on approval of the agreement for this time period at the $1,200 a year for obviously the south half of New Prague, basically, within the circle.
Okay.
Do you know, is it going to be the same equipment as Scott County, or are you guys going to have to
No,
learn different systems?
I hope it's the same. I don't know that answer to that yet.
Okay.
I know they were looking at equipment that other adjacent counties had bought, because we had both been on the same tabulator. And it was interesting being on two different, because we have, kind of two sets of election judges, both in the same location, and it was different equipment. I mean, majorly different. So I hope they take that into consideration, but we'll have input into that.
So they haven't purchased the...
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Ken? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the agreement with LeSueur County for the $1,200 annual fee through, was it December 2021?
Yep.
Second.
Got a second by Dave Bruzek. Any other comments or questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, 3.5. As the council is aware, and we went into a closed session at the end of our last meeting to do the evaluation of City Administrator Mike Johnson. And so I just want to kind of do a summation of the evaluation for the public. The rating that Mike received was 4 out of 5, which translated into an exceptional, generally exceeds council expectations rating for 2017. This is consistent with prior year's ratings and reflects the great job that Mike continues to do for the city of New Prague. After reviewing the evaluation forms and comments made by the council during the evaluation, it is the council's opinion that Mike is an asset to the community and has done a great job. Mike continues to develop as a manager and works hard with the department heads to better serve both the city council and, more importantly, the city. It was also discussed that we are going to have a workshop, probably in the next meeting or sometime, if we don't want to do it on the same night as a meeting, to kind of determine some goals for 2018. So Mike, on behalf of the city council, I'd like to congratulate on another successful year for the city, and thank you for the hard work you put into it to make it so. Next on the agenda, the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions, changes, questions again, or any issues with any items in the consent agenda?
I have one on the minutes, and it's just it's on the first page, page 967, third paragraph from the bottom. There's two words in that last sentence that kind of mean the same thing, will and would. And I just have it circled here. I'll give that to Barb at the end. I'm not sure which word is better, but you don't
We'll scratch will.
Pardon?
We'll scratch will.
Scratch will, okay.
Okay.
Have a couple of questions on the accounts payable. I guess this maybe is for Ken. What's a sonic wall switch? Or sonic wall control, whatever it is, switch? It's first page, Tech Network.
It's the firewall that we had put in.
Yeah.
Part of that.
That's
Glen
what-
actually told me that, I didn't know.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a firewall.
All the departments got a little share of that. It was part of the firewall protection and installation, and then also, it is a switch also. They just kind of incorporated it all into one sentence there. So
Okay.
I asked the same question this morning. That's the only reason because I'm looking at it going, what is that?
Mitch would probably be able to explain a little better about it, but what is
I should
that?
ask Mitch.
Depending on the model you got, but it's just a firewall that takes all your information in and out just to make sure you're not sending out anything bad to the internet or allowing people to download bad things from the internet. It just kind of scans and tracks what everyone's doing depending on the model and the system you guys have. They'll track, to make sure that everyone's going to professional sites and not playing fantasy football, or depending on how you have it set up and all that.
Okay. Well, thank you. Anything else?
I don't.
What's a BISS contribution in police? Jim, is that some,
That's the, supposed to be PISS,
oh, okay.
but it is for the employee that is a coordinator for LETG. In the past, we paid, with New World, our old system, all the cities paid to an employee that handled New World. So when we switched over, the thought was we would continue that payment on our part of that employee. I think the county pays half and we pay the other half.
Okay. Good. Any other questions or issues with any of the consent agenda? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Dave Brusick. If there's no other questions or comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. Moving right along, miscellaneous. Patrick, you have anything?
Nope.
Next time, let's show up on time, okay, buddy? I'm just kidding.
He gave me crap for 1 minute.
I gotta treat you just like everyone else, Patrick. Mitch, you got anything? Thanks a lot for adding that little info for us. We appreciate that.
Glad to help.
Jim?
I have nothing.
Glenn? Oh,
I got a couple things.
Whoa, the hair. I didn't really want you to say anything about it, but.
Show and tell.
In the back of your packet.
Yep, there's a picture of the filter rack assembly. If you remember back in August of 2017, you approved the purchase of 720 filters for the biosolids filter. And there's 3 cells, so there's 240 of these filters in each one of these cells. So I just thought I'd bring an example of what it is. You can look at it afterwards. The filter is full of very small tubes as the water is pulled through the filter, through those tubes, and then out to the stream or effluent water. So that project actually just got installed. So there's 576 new filters installed. Unfortunately, the company didn't send us all the parts we needed, so we got another 144 to go in, which isn't the end of the world. Part of this contract, they also supplied a technician to help install the filters, help educate the guys even more than what they thought they knew about the filter. They come out of there knowing even more than they did before, which was a really good thing for them. So it was a learning process along with replacing these filters. So just thought I'd bring that along and let you know that that project is about 80% complete, but it went pretty well. Got it done in a week.
And this is a clean one, we didn't bring it in.
This is a clean one. So that project looks good. Also wanted to update the council on, we're meeting, me, Ken Ondich, and Chris Cabot from SH is meeting next Tuesday before a different meeting to kind of narrow down that stormwater line in the park and try to figure out how we can fit that in there to work around the memorial, the Veterans Memorial. So no major decisions been made yet. We will make you aware of it when we do feel like we have a really solid way of doing that. There's a lot of different options. Some are going to cost us more money and probably are not the best option because of how much cover will end up on the pipe. The pipe is kind of shallow to begin with, so if we start moving it down to the east, it just kind of creates a covering the pipe issue. And so there's a number of things that got to be looked at yet. But we're meeting next Tuesday on that.
And we're planning to, if a decision is to move that, planning to do that during the street project, correct?
That is correct. That is the plan right now. Yep.
Okay, we'll bring that back to you on the 20th. But, we had options A and B, and as staff took a look at it, needed to have further discussion with the engineer, that even though he gave us some choices, we had some feedback back to him, so with our project managers being coordinated at the time. So,
Okay.
try to keep your committee going.
Thank you.
Good.
And like I said, it's not a rush. I don't want us to rush on our city end. They just wanted a status, so.
I think we can come up with some pretty good ideas. There's a couple of things we just don't know the answer to. One is if that force main would go away, that would just open that up. But we won't know that until the end of 2018. So I think we can come up with probably a good option even without knowing that at this point. So that's kind of our objective.
Okay.
Last thing, and I won't keep you very long, just wanted to talk about that snowfall we had on January 22nd. I really want to, and I think you know it, Ken Ondich was nice enough to send a kind of a update to the council, but the guys I think did a great job. We had a few calls of people that weren't happy, and I can understand that because it was one of those snowfalls that packed down on the road, and we ended up going back a number of days just to try to scrape that off. Just not a lot you can do about it. But the guys started plowing snow on Monday at roughly, sent out everybody at noon on Monday afternoon, and besides taking 5-10 minute breaks that they're supposed to be taking when they get tired or whatever, they took an hour off roughly at about 10 o'clock that evening. But they plowed this whole town 3 different times. They started at noon on Monday, and they went home 7:30 on Tuesday morning. The guys did a pretty good job. They took, what do I have in here? They took 80 loads of snow off the street on Monday night. They took 88 loads, and then Wednesday morning they took another 80 loads off. So 168 loads of snow off that main street. And those are all quad trucks, so that's a lot of snow. It's pretty unbelievable. So 30 tons of salt, 300 gallons of fuel, roughly about $3,000 hauling. It was a snow event. It was a big one. We're just not used to them. They've happened before. They just, thank God, don't come often, so we all forget. So that's the deal. That's all I got. Thanks.
And I see that they were working at the baseball field today.
They're hanging the nets. So you just gotta love when you see somebody there.
Yeah, I drive by every day just to make sure to see if the crane is still upright and hasn't moved. But
So the last I saw, they had the cables hung. Did they have the nets at the end of the day?
I didn't pay attention. It was getting kind of dark, but I did notice that.
I'll check on them tomorrow.
Okay.
They were out there last week too on a real cold day.
Yeah. It's just they've had
I was
some
amazed.
cold days.
Okay. Thank you, Glenn. Ken?
Nothing.
Okay. Mike?
other than if you wanted to
Yep.
mention this one.
Go ahead. You can do it, Mike.
You've got an article in front of you that came out in the league bulletin today. I was made aware of it last week after I returned, that there's a state auditors group that's working on taking a look at possibly increasing the fire relief benefit cap. Not that it necessarily affects New Prague, but the concept of what's contained in this bill is not a whole lot different than what's really there right now as far as the Fire Relief Association increasing benefits either with or without municipal ratification. But the current limit is $10,000, and there was a case involving Eden Prairie, and now it's being looked at by a number of other cities where this cap might be moved to $15,000. And it really doesn't necessarily affect us on the upward amount of the cap, just because the economics aren't the same with those communities that are dealing with this. But the group that's involved includes representatives from, I believe it's 8 different fire relief representatives, 2 municipal officials, one is a mayor, one is a city administrator. The city administrator just happens to be from a city where he was the fire chief or a firefighter for over 20 years and is retired under that program. So there's a question whether there's adequate representation with that. And then you've got the state auditor involved. They met and are recommending to the state legislative commission on pensions and retirement that they increase that. It's actually been in the bill the last couple of years. It's been vetoed by Governor Dayton. And really what it amounts to, if you recall, for the discussions that we've had with our Fire Relief Association and the benefit we provide, we're not up at that level, but in doing that, there historically is ratification and the approval of the bylaws between both the City Council and the Fire Relief Association. Under the statute, the Fire Relief Association could technically increase that benefit and pay out that benefit at a higher amount. However, if that resulted in the economics of what's contained within their fire pension fund, that would require the city to provide an increase to cover the cost of that, it would revert back to a level that was ratified between the City Council and the Fire Association. So it kind of depends on how each of the group takes an action. Fortunately, we've been able to have good discussions with our Fire Relief Association, and hopefully we can continue that going forward in the future. There's some other items that are impacting this decision in another community that brought it to my attention. But it's just something to take a look at, that historically there's been ratification by the council and the Relief Association. Technically, they potentially could do it, but it just depends on what amount of funds they have in there and what they pay out, and whether that benefit can be supported if that were to be made available to future firefighters, and whether there would be an increase or contribution even from the city to finance those future amounts. So it's one that's worth noting, and that I think is worth bringing up to our state representative and state senator for those that will be going to the March League of Minnesota Cities Legislative Day.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would definitely be a good point of discussion with both Representative Vogel and Senator Draheim on what our opinion is on that, and make sure that, you know, the economics is a little different in the Eden Prairies and the Lakevilles and the Maplewoods compared to the smaller communities. So, okay, thank you, Mike. Anything else?
No.
Okay, Barb, do you have anything?
I don't.
All right, Sean.
I do. I just wanted to get an update from Mike on our city worker in the overtime situation.
If you recall, I was on vacation for 10 days in January, and now coming back after catching up for last week, and we'll be dealing with the personal family medical situation for the next couple of days. And so upon that return, I should be able to return back to that project.
Okay. I'd appreciate it. I'd like to get that on the docket, if we could, maybe in the next council meeting. Just dragged on for about a year now, and I know we've always been, there's a lot of, I know how busy you are, and you need vacation time too, but it's starting to, I'm having a tough time explaining that to to some of the workers, how come we can't get this moving along a little bit quicker.
Well, even if we moved it along, it still probably wouldn't be addressed until the 2019 budget,
Well,
in my opinion.
that-
We're not gonna change the
they're just
budget.
looking for some type of answer
Right.
from this council.
No, I'm just, as long as they understand that.
And it's been over a year.
Right, but
Yeah.
right, I'm just, as long as they understand that we're not gonna amend our budget, in my opinion,
Well,
to make a change on this, because it's gonna be an employee change, which is not
right.
a short-term.
But it gives them an answer, and I don't think budget-wise that it's gonna be anything that would break the budget, but if the council decides at that time that whatever way it goes, that's one thing, at least they got their answer.
Mhm.
So, and that's what they're looking at, and that's what they're looking for, so. And we've had a very busy year with all the building and constructions and special projects and gearing up for the 2020 street thing and, you know, different vacations and everything else, but it's weighed on them, and they've approached me almost a year ago that I initially brought this up, and it's been a long time in the works, and they're losing faith in me, and I don't, it's not because of me. I've been edging it along, but nothing's getting done on it. And, or there has been progress made, excuse me, that's not fair to say, but it's been long enough and they're getting very, they'd like some closure on this. And they're not sitting out there. And they want an answer from us on the council
Okay,
after we get that information.
anything else?
That's it.
David?
Yeah, I have one comment and then request. This ties in with what Glenn just talked about. The large dump of snow we got on, what is it now, 2 weeks ago tonight? I was having coffee down at Patty's on Main Street, and I walked in at about the time some more elderly senior citizens than myself were trying to walk out, and they were having some trouble getting across from the sidewalk to the street to their car. And one of the business owners approached me and said, you know, he or she has talked to other business people on Main Street, and right now they're paying for their own snow removal on the sidewalks. And she says, it would really be nice if the city would take over cleaning the Main Street sidewalks. And then this person said, well, she had talked to, and it's Patty, had talked to other people on Main Street, and they all agreed, well, if the city will do it, we'll pay them. How much, never mentioned, but we'll pay them to do it. She says, we think they'll have a better, we'll have a better looking sidewalk. And the only comment I could make is I said, well, you know, when we have big snowfalls like this, I think what you're asking for is not only clean the street, clean the sidewalk, but then clean up all the snow that you pushed off the sidewalk and pushed into the street, or vice versa. They can't do that in a few hours' time. But, well, talk about it. See if we can get something going between the city and the business owners so that the city might take it over for us with them paying the city back something. So I just want to throw that out for some thought on our parts and Glen's and Mike.
I could certainly, excuse me, add a couple of comments as you take a look at that, because as I debated in any number of the communities that I've worked in, is that, you know, we're no different than if you were to try to take that on from a personnel standpoint. We don't have that kind of staff on board right now to be able to take care of that. So you would have to add staff and or equipment likely to take care of that, unless you're going to push it to the back of the snowplow process at some later date. But likely additional manpower and machinery equipment would be needed. Trying to bill the property owner, you run into the same thing from a billing standpoint, is What happens if they don't pay? How are you going to collect? So that issue, in taking a look at that collection, is that unless you create a downtown self-improvement district or something like that, where they take care of payments by way of assessments against the property, that's the only way to ensure that you have that kind of funding. And in many of the cities I've been in that have had the debate that they could not get a majority of the downtown property owners to come together to vote to institute a charge against themselves to pay the city or any private entity to come in and do snow removal.
Okay.
So the billing would be just like that. You go ahead and you bill everybody, and you go through the sequencing of who is the property owner and by parcel number and or by address or whatnot. Is that the billing process is worse than what we go through to try to deal with weed control that Ken handles out of that office. So unless you're willing to commit additional manpower, personnel, and go through some type of creation of a municipal improvement district that they would pay for, that has to be voted upon by all of the owners that would be in that district. There's a specific provision in the state statutes that allows for that to be created and put in place if they want to, but they would have to vote on it and the means of collection and payment and where the monies would go and what it would be geared toward.
You call that a municipal?
It's called a municipal improvement district under state law.
Thank you.
And if I can add one thing to that too, is there's cities that have probably tried something similar, and even though you get the 20 of them that are on the street right now, or on Main Street right now, that, yep, that's a great idea. Tomorrow, one of the 20 sells, and that person says, no, I got my own plow equipment, I'm gonna do it myself. Well then, that kind of, you almost have to make it like a policy or ordinance that you don't have a choice. It's gonna be this way, or it's gonna be that way. So that could be one more obstacle that person can run it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
So,
Okay. Maggie?
No, sir.
Amy?
No,
What do you mean, no?
I know, this time I don't have any.
You got the fundraiser.
Surprise! Oh, yes. This Saturday, the Veterans Memorial is their big Music Fest event. It starts February 10th at 1. The last band starts at 9. Their tickets are selling right now. We're closing the pre-sale on Friday. Right now they're $10. They'll be $12 at the door. There are 3 places that have the tickets right now: City Club, Chamber of Commerce, and First Bank and Trust. So hopefully everyone can make it.
Okay. Now anything else?
No, I'm good.
I don't have anything, so I guess I'll make a motion to adjourn.
second.
Second by Dave Brusick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, thank you, everyone.